of Centreville for June 4th, 2020. So first thing we have on here is the Citizens Forum. So I guess we have QACTV again. So thank you guys for being here and allowing
it's our pleasure.
the public to participate. So is there anybody that has anything?
Sure. And just a reminder for the people that can hear me in Zoom right now, please, when our meeting room or our other hosts ask you to join a breakout room, join that so that we can verify that you're here to make public comment. We'll do the emails first and give them time to get Zoom situated, though.
Okay.
Our first comment comes from Barry Feldman from 185 Symphony Way. I wish to note my opposition at this time to the charter amendment proposed by Mr. McCluskey. I feel that it would be hasty to plug what may or may not be a hole in the charter, and I think that it would be better to take more time to develop and consider whether any change to the charter is advisable. Mr. McCluskey's motivation appears to be his interpretation of the charter would discourage residents from running in a special election if they would not be able to also run in the regular election. I, for one, would be willing to run in the special election under those circumstances, and I expect that others would also be willing to do so. It is often the case that vacancies in elective offices are filled on what is recognized as a temporary basis just to fill the period before the next regular election. With that in mind, I would suggest that the charter as it is may deal with the current situation just as we would want. I also do not feel that it would be appropriate to try to postpone the effective date of Mr. Shant's resignation. To do so would have Mr. Shantz continue to serve under circumstances that he, and I think many others, feel would be inappropriate. I think that the most residents feel that Mr. Shantz did the right thing by submitting his resignation, as he has, and that we shouldn't tinker with it. Lastly, I would be interested in whether the town attorney agrees with Mr. McCluskey's interpretation of Section 408 of the Charter. Even if she does at this time, I would urge consideration of what I believe is more compelling interpretation that would permit a resident to file certificates of nomination for both the special and regular elections for the same office, albeit in different elections, without implicating the prohibition in Section 408 against a resident filing certificates of nomination at the same time for more than one elective town public office. And they wanted to note that emphasis was added. Our next letter comes from Joe Brown, 122 Concerto Avenue. To the Centreville Town Council, the decision to replace Josh Shantz should be in the hands of the residents. Since this will be nearly a full term, the council should definitely not be deciding on the replacement. Either fill the seat by special election or fill it in October at the next regular election. Due to the slower schedule during the summer, it would seem more cost-effective to wait until October. The town went for many months when Frank Oggins resigned with only 2 council members, so I think that October should work out satisfactorily. Our next comment comes from Dan Worth from 207 South Commerce Street. Dear council members, there are at least 3 issues that need to be resolved as a result of Mr. Shantz resigning his seat so close to a regular election. I think a committee should be appointed to study these issues rather than rushing to a solution. The first issue, which has been discussed on social media and in a newspaper article, is that any losing candidate in a special election would be ineligible to run in a regular election. I propose that the language of the first sentence of Section 414B be changed as follows to fix the situation. If the remainder of the term is less than 6 months from a regularly scheduled election, the council shall appoint some qualified person to serve the remainder of the term or until the next regularly scheduled election, whichever is sooner. By the way, the original language in Section 408 of the Town Charter called for a 30-day candidate filing deadline. That was changed to 60 days a couple years ago, at the same time the election was moved to October. If the filing deadline had not been changed, then there would have not been enough time for a special election to be held, and the losing candidates to register for the regular election, even if the resignation occurred as late as July 7th. A resignation after that would defer the election to the regular election anyway. The second issue arises if the town council makes a change to the charter so the vacancy is filled during this year's regular election. This issue, who gets what seat? It would make sense that the person with the most votes would get the seat with the longest term, but the charter does not say that. The most recent change to the charter, Resolution 04-2020, only accounts for the special case this year when the council was expanded from 3 to 5 members. Perhaps Section 409D should be worded more generally to read, the candidate receiving the highest number of votes shall receive the longest available vacant term. The candidate receiving the second highest number of votes shall receive the next longest available vacant term, etc., until all the vacant seats are filled. The third issue is that there is not enough time to implement any charter for it to take effect before the candidate filing deadline. Also, there is a risk of court action or a referendum petition nullifying whatever change to the charter is made. Furthermore, the town council would be in violation of the charter, which states that the special election must occur within 60 to 90 days because the change would not take effect in time. For all the reasons stated above, I suggest that the committee be appointed to carefully study this matter. That would be consistent with what was done when moving to a town council of 5 members. Our next email comes from Caroline Huddleston from 305 South Liberty Street. It is my understanding that Mr. Shantz plans to resign following the June 11th council meeting. I respectfully request that he resigns from the council immediately per the town charter, Article 2, Section 202. Any council member who ceases to reside in the town during his or her term of office shall immediately resign, terminating his or her membership on the town council. The vacancy created by the resignation of any council member's position shall be filled as set forth in Section 414 of this charter. Mr. Shantz should not be permitted to participate or vote in this or any other upcoming meetings. He is no longer a resident. I ask for the immediate resignation as he no longer resides in or represents the interests of the town of Centreville. That concludes our emails. It looks like as of now in Zoom, we just have people watching, right? And no public comment from Zoom at this time.
If I could just comment on something, there was a letter here from Joe Brown. He said that town went many months from when Frank Ogans resigned with only 2 council members. Frank Ogans never resigned. He served his 2 full terms. He was on vacation for a couple of months over the winter, a few months over the winters, but he never resigned. Thank you.
I think also, he's also got something in there about
An appointment?
Since this will be a nearly a full term, the council should definitely not be deciding on the replacement, and the council had we were not going to do anything to make a decision on a replacement. We were trying to figure out, how we're going to handle it so that it would be voted on by the people. So I will turn it over to Sharon, who is our attorney, to kind of give us a little synopsis on where we are and where we need to head.
Sure, and a lot of this has been alluded to. There we go. Some of this has been alluded to already, but Mr. Shantz has submitted a resignation letter. The way the letter reads, it would be effective after the June 2020 Town Council meeting. So presumably that's the June 11th Town Council meeting. And the charter provides that when this occurs, a vacancy would be created, and that vacancy should be filled by a special election held within not more than 90 nor less than 60 days after that occurs. So that would put the timeline based on a June 11th resignation date as between October 10th and September 9th.
August 10th.
August 10th, I'm sorry, and September 9th. However, the deadline for filing for the October 5th election is August 3rd. So a candidate that would be attempting to participate in the special election, if they were not successful, would not be able to participate in the October 5th election. So that's kind of the background, and there are many options, I think, that are on the table. There is the possibility of amending the charter to address this scenario. We would have a tight time frame to do that, but it could be accomplished, as Mr. Worth pointed out, it would not be accomplished by the time the nomination is due, but it would be accomplished before the special election, the end of that period could occur. Another, I think, possibility that's being considered is whether the resignation date could be changed, and then that therefore would allow either, well, it wouldn't allow us sooner. Even if the resignation became effective tonight, that would put the 60 to 90 day window starting at August 3rd, which is also the date of the nomination for candidates deadline at 4 o'clock that day, so the election wouldn't even be completed by then. So even an effective immediately tonight would not solve that issue. if the resignation date were postponed to the earliest it could be would be July 7th, then that would allow for that seat to be filled at the same time as the general election, because that would be within that exactly 90-day window. I suggest if you were going to go that route, maybe July 8th or 9th might be better to just give a one-day window there. So I think those are some of the options that are looked at, being considered. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sharon, if you could explain a little bit about the charter, how it works with the current charter change. I think it's Resolution 04-2020, which Mr. Worth had indicated, right? So the way that it reads is the top 2 vote getters get a 3-year term, and the number 3 person gets a 2-year term. How do we either fix that part, right, to address this potential 4th, if we're not going to have a special election? How do we address that?
So you could pursue a charter amendment to do a permanent fix to that section, or there is a provision in the town charter, and it is section 416 that allows the council to pass an ordinance to deal with any issues related to elections that are not otherwise addressed in the charter. And I would submit that issue in this particular case, it's addressed for the first 3 candidates for the October 5th election, getting the top 2 getting the 3-year terms and the 3rd getting the 2nd, but it wouldn't address how do you handle this 4th position if that were part of the election. And I think you could do that by ordinance for this election only. It may warrant a permanent fix in the future in case this happened again, but it could be addressed that way for this one.
So I don't think it's good for us to look at doing another charter change at this time. I think we're too rushed. We're not allowed to have public hearings where people are allowed to be here. I just don't think it's the right time for that. So my recommendation would be that we ask Mr. Shantz if he would go ahead and redate his letter, and I think July 10th would be the best day, and that would be a Friday, I believe. Actually, the Friday before our council meeting in July. And then that way we could just go ahead and include everything during the regular election. I think it doesn't make much sense to do a special election when it's that close to the general election, and it would cost money, and it's just not. I don't think it's fair because people can't run, for both. So just do it all at one time in October when everybody's voting, I think would be the best thing and the easiest thing for the town. So that's my recommendation.
I'm in agreement that I think a special election, given the prohibition from being able to run in both elections exists. So you and I agree, I think, on that. I think that my feeling is that this is something that we should change. It's got to be fixed because this could come up again. I think the last time that we had a vacancy, this is going back to the late 90s, early 2000s, Rob Babbitt was appointed, and it was less than 6 months on his term. So it was, the council was able to appoint somebody at that point. But my feeling is the charter should be changed. I want to respect Mr. Shantz had put in his resignation for the June meeting, which we had scheduled for June 11th. So my position is I think we should go with the charter change. We just did, I don't know how many charter amendments to go from 3 to 5. They were introduced at the beginning of this COVID-19, and we were able to pass them with having public comment. And now that we've got the Zoom capabilities, we do have the ability to not only read comments online, but also people can also submit. And from some of the feedback that I've heard, it's actually easier, right? You can be sitting home eating your dinner and be able to make comments and not have to come all the way down to a council meeting. So my feeling is I think we should go with the charter amendment, but I definitely think that we should do whatever we can to not have a special election if possible. And then I also think that if that's the way to go, the ordinance to specify the 4th member, the lowest 4th member, who how that term would work. So,
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you that I don't think the charter needs to be changed, but I don't think doing it right now is the proper thing to do. I think it should be changed when there's 5 people sitting here.
that's fine.
That's what the public decided. We want to go with 5 council members. I think wait till we do it then and do it properly trying to take everything into account. I think trying to do it hastily right now would be a mistake. So that's just my opinion. But
Josh would like to add a comment.
Let's hear from Josh.
All right, I'm going to mute our room in here.
Hey guys, so I put in my resignation because obviously it's the right thing to do. Unfortunately, I didn't know the letter wasn't released to the public. I would like to see that done, just so we get some context on what's going on. But unfortunately, circumstances, personal circumstance, I'm not able to maintain being there. I still have my home there. It's for sale. It's not anything anybody doesn't know. So I'm trying to get it sold, but unfortunately I'm not able to be in town, and I don't think it's fair that I hold a seat any longer than I absolutely have to. I wanted to see what we started through, which is why I chose that date. I want to make sure that the budget gets done. I want to make sure that we see all this stuff through going into the fiscal year and finish the project. But I also I would agree that doing anything hasty at this point isn't fair to the people either. And I don't want to cause any more dissension among people being able to have a voice and do what's right. So I'm trying to do my part by freeing up the seat. It's the right thing to do, but I also think the right thing to do is to give people a chance to talk about it and see how the public wants to handle it. I don't know if there's something we can do as far as public comment for next week and let the people decide. I'll do whatever they want me to do. If it's easier for me to stay an extra month, and it makes the charter thing a non-issue, and we just go into October, and we're vacant for a couple of months, and it's no big deal, then that's fine. If they want to see something done quicker, which honestly, just even going to the public comment tonight, it seems that there's some talk out there that it's just let's kind of let it roll, and we'll deal with it in October as opposed to doing anything hasty with the charter. I don't want to mess with the charter either. I do think that the fourth seat thing should be addressed, just because we're going to 5 members, and it could happen again. You never know what's going to happen. Pandemics throw a monkey wrench in everybody's gig, but I would agree that I don't want to do anything hasty right now. But I would like to get some feedback on the public on whether they think it would be better to wait an extra month, or we can do what the letter says, and I'd be happy to vacate next month. So like I said, I'm trying to do the right thing on my end to clear it up, and I'd like the feedback on what the people want, and we'll go ahead and do that.
And come back over to you, Mike. And we're back in the room.
so I guess we'll look to the attorney for, is that something that's possible? We just wait until next meeting and see if we get more comment? That if people aren't willing to comment at this meeting this time, I mean.
So if you're going to go the charter amendment route, I think you would need to have them ready to be introduced at your next meeting if you're going to wait. So I think there are already drafts. I haven't had a chance to review those yet because but I can do that, and we can have them ready in case that's the route you decide to go. But I don't see anything else that would be harmed by waiting until next week's meeting. It's up to you all.
Like I said, I think the simplest thing is for him to date his letter differently than what's dated currently. Just take it back and put it as July 10th and make things a lot easier on the town as a whole. We've gone through a lot of turmoil lately with this election. I think let's do it so that it's right for the public and everybody has a chance to run, as many people that want to run for these seats that are going to be, because that'll be 4 seats at one time, so.
So essentially what's going to happen next week is there's going to be a public comment at some point, and based on that public comment, you're either going to have charter amendments, 1 or 2, or a charter amendment and an ordinance ready to go to be introduced that night, right? During old business, new business, after the public comment. Or we'll have a change to the resignation letter that will then state a new date. And based on public comments, whether they're received via email or that night, the decision will be made. That's what I'm hearing, right? So I just want to make sure that's what Josh meant, because he also said that he doesn't want to do a charter amendment at this time. And if the comments come in and say resign tonight, meaning the 11th, that means the alternative is charter amendments we have to go through that process.
Or you allow
Or we have a special
election to
election.
happen and people can't, that's a possibility. It doesn't sound like one that's anyone's supporting right now, but it is a possibility.
Yep. So I just, want to make sure that if we go that route, then it's going to be a charter amendment. And so what that means is that if it's a resignation as of the 11th, right, or as of the 12th, Josh will no longer be on the council during the charter amendment process, during the public hearing, during the, all of that process, nor will he be around for the vote. So we need to know that the charter amendment, right, I'm not saying how you got to vote, but you got to vote for it if that's the way that it's going to go. Because if we don't, then we're going to run the risk of now we're in violation of not having called for a special election. So I'm okay either way, but I just want to make sure that everyone understands what the implications are if it happens on June 12th, and he's no longer here even after we put it in, right? I don't want to have a deadlock. I don't want to go that route. So, and I think I think all three of us agree that we don't want to have a special election if we can avoid that, and we don't want to disqualify other candidates.
I think Josh should raise his hand. Let's see if he wants to add anything to that. I'm going to mute us.
No, I was just kind of giving a thumbs up. I agree. I don't want to have I'd like to make this as painless as possible. So I think if we can avoid, any unnecessary stuff, that's definitely the route I want to go.
We're back in the room.
So I think we have one or two ways to go. We're either going to have a special election or he changes his resignation letter, because I'm not willing to do the charter change. And if he's no longer a member of council, then it's me and you deadlocked. So a charter amendment's not going to pass anyway. So like I said, I think the easiest thing right now, the best thing for the town is change the date, July 10th. He resigns before the next meeting in July. So it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference, I don't think, because there's not anything going on that I know of that we have to be concerned about right now.
We don't have any other meetings scheduled.
Yeah, there's no other meetings. It's July or June 11th, and then July 16th, I think, is the next meeting after that.
So I'd put it out there to Josh, hey Josh, are you willing to just do this, right? I mean, we don't want to have a deadlock, right? And you're the one that has the power. You wrote the original letter, and if you are willing to agree to do it on July 10th, make it effective July 10th, as Jeff suggested, I think that would solve this conundrum of what will happen if just Josh or Jeff and I are remaining.
Go over to Josh.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, like I said, it eliminates the issue, plus it takes me out of, any other further decision making. So it kind of solves both problems. I think it's fair to everyone else. So I would be happy to do that if that's what solves the issue without having any charter amendments, for sure.
All right, so what we're hearing now is that Josh will update his resignation letter to make it effective July 10th.
Which will put us in a window where everybody will be at the regular general election.
Yep.
So anybody that's interested in running, they need to apply before August 3rd.
And Sharon, you will put together an ordinance
Yes.
that will fix the fourth seat? Okay.
Yep.
We'll have that for next meeting.
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
I will not be at your next meeting, but I will have it for you.
Okay. All right, so I think that takes care of that. I don't think we have anything else to discuss on that, do we?
No, I think that so what we're saying here, as long as we get a change in the resignation letter from Josh, you guys are good with that, and then that will eliminate the need to have a special election. We will just have the regular election will be the regular election and the special election, right? Because there is a vacancy, and Sharon will write an ordinance that says the fourth seat, which is a 2-year term, will be here, and that, we'll decide that based on how many votes the person gets. Yep, okay.
All right, and then we have one more item to discuss, which I think is kind of important, is the outdoor dining for restaurants. I know there's been some things thrown around about possibly doing something on Lawyers Row, and I think Tim put something out today that Denton had done something with parking or something like that. So if you want to talk about that and just, I think the only issue we have with that is the milling and paving right now.
Right, so the governor, a week or so ago said that outdoor dining was going to be available. We're very constrained in what restaurants we have and where they can possibly go. And one of the things that I noted that the governor had said is that local governments should be leaning in to do whatever we can to accommodate and to be creative. Many years ago, before we had the expanded sidewalks, we had talked about putting in just a temporary barriers where the original parking was, where the expanded sidewalk was now. This is state highway property. We went to the state and they said that it was okay. In the intervening, before we actually implemented it, we looked at actually expanding them out permanently, and that's when everybody started talking about parking as well. So I just saw something tonight, I think Kenny had seen it as well, where Denton, for their restaurants, they took away the parking for a temporary measure, put in some barriers, and then allowed for some expanded sidewalk. Our sidewalk on Commerce Street or the parking area that would be similar is considerably more complicated, right? There's a lot more cars that are going to be going through there every single day. There is milling, there is paving, there is all of that stuff that's going to be happening. Plus, it's state highway, and state highway may have said, yes, we could expand it out back in the day, but now it's going out even further. They may then say that it's not. So, I think it's a great idea if we could do it. If logistically it won't work, then I get that as well. The other things we were talking about was possibly closing down Lawyers Row temporarily, or maybe even using the courthouse green. And I think that Carol maybe I don't know if we have any results back from what the restaurant owners were. I think the bigger point is that the council is interested in doing what we can to help them out if there's a way we can help them out. So.
And we put it on in this special meeting. It was requested because we want to try and get this moving as quick as possible. We didn't want to try and wait until the next council meeting, which will be the 11th, next Thursday. So we want to get the staff to be able to start working on this. I know we've already reached out to the county liquor board to make sure that it was feasible and stuff like that. So I think that's been taken care of.
Carol has received, she actually had already talked to the restaurants about possibly doing something else. She came to me and talked about, would it be possible to use Lawyers Row? When she brought that up, the courthouse wasn't discussed at that time, but when she brought it up to the restaurants, which she has conference calls with maybe every other week, they were not interested. Most of them said that once they were operational full-time, they would be interested, but they were not interested in expanding over to Lawyers Row or the courthouse at this time. So when Tim brought up or sent out the information earlier about the parking, we're anticipating them to say not right now, but she's going to check with them tomorrow. It was later in the day, so she was going to check with them tomorrow, just poll them about any additional parking. So I think their feeling is, are they comparing how many tables they would have compared to how much staff, how much food they have to buy, and then how profitable would that be for them. And I think they're looking at, if I'm bringing in staff, is it really feasible for me to do at this point? Because even some of them, I think even right now, aren't willing to do just out on the sidewalk at this point until they're open full-time. Or at least a 50% capacity inside the buildings.
50% is more expensive than actually having full
Right.
capacity.
Right.
I've been hearing a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other issue is the sidewalk doesn't really give them the tables, the tops that they
No.
need. So I think
Right.
that's where Lawyers Row would kind of
Right.
help with that. Because I know, like the city of Annapolis, they're actually closing streets down to actually do this. So
There were concerns about, liability issues, who's liable if something happens, and am I missing something else, Steve, that we talked about?
No, I think that was one of the main issues.
Yeah.
But as far as, staff crossing the street to get to Lawyers Row, what happens if somebody got hurt?
Yep.
Who's liable and.
And Steve and I spoke with the liquor board, and they were fine with it. They encouraged it. They thought it was a great idea. And I will say that the feedback that Carol received is that the restaurants were extremely appreciative of the council for coming up with this. And what we talked about was if the council would want to, if there's a motion or anything that says, you know, we're okay with opening, expanding on Lawyers Road, checking with the county about the courthouse at this point, and then when they're ready to do it, if they're ready to do it, then, you know, then the town is ready to go ahead and help implement.
So what I'd like to see in that instance, it probably won't happen between now and next meeting. Let's get that on the agenda if we can. And that way we can make a motion if need be, so that when they are ready, if we also might have to amend Chapter 7, alcohol, beverages, right? So if we needed to do a temporary waiver of that, we could be prepared for what they're looking for. And that would get us through July when we're not going to have any more meetings.
Yeah, and that is the waiver is on the agenda because the way our outdoor dining ordinance we have now in the Central Business District, they have the ability to serve alcohol and food out on their sidewalks and in alleys. If any of the restaurants, just say, for instance, Two Fellas, who, you know, they have a parking lot, they're not permitted to serve in their parking lot. So the council would have to waive that. So I have it on the agenda for the council to consider. That way, if any of the other restaurants want to do some type of outdoor dining in their parking lot or whatever, and I'm sure they have to have that approved through the liquor board to expand their area, the fire marshal, the planning and zoning, so.
Sharon, do you think you can come up with a motion for that next week to cover whatever we need to cover that gives some leeway, but also is tight enough that people aren't going to be able to just walk around town with beers, or, you know, whatever, so.
Right.
Well, I think it would have to be specific for if we close down Lawyers Row, that area only, and then maybe a parking lot or something like that, but
Right,
not-
so if there's a restaurant that has a liquor license and they could use it in their parking lot or their whatever part that they possess, yeah. Yep. Sharon will figure it out.
So Steve, what's the possibility, I saw the thing that Tim put out about the picture from Denton, I guess they had the, like the road barriers that they put up, because you would need some type of barrier between the street and the parking, just so somebody didn't veer over into a crowd that's, you know, sitting on, but I think even if they're allowed to open at 50%, I think allowing them to have some extra space outside, just to get people to come out and help them out a little bit, I think would be.
I think the first step would be to contact State Highway because it is their, you know, their right of way, and see if they're amenable to a concept such as that.
Okay, can you find out that? And even it has to be after they do the milling and paving, you know, when things open back up to 50% or whatever, it would be nice just to add that extra space if we could, for the time being, just to help them out. Good with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
At least that way we, you know, kind of look at things and get things rolling so we know where we stand, so.
Yep.
And I think, as Carolyn mentioned, we did discussion with the liquor board. They had also suggested that we talk to Dr. Ciantola from the health department to get his feedback on the Lawyers Row and the courthouse green concept. So,
All right, so
so
can
we
staff
need to
start,
follow up on that as well.
can you guys start doing that then? Just so we have something in place for when they're ready? So, all right, I think that's pretty much all we had on the agenda for tonight for that. I see we have another round of citizen forum if anybody out there is willing to and wanting to.
Sure. We do have a couple people waiting in Zoom. Just remind people, if you do want to make a comment, please send a message to our screening room host, which is Chris, and he'll make sure to put you in line for public comment.
Before we do that, can we just have, Carolyn, can you read the public comment guidelines just so that we, just so they're out there?
Gotta fuddle through I'm stealing the one
Fine.
from the county. Welcome to this meeting of the Centreville Town Council. This is a public meeting that is now being aired live on our local cable television station, QAC TV 7. This meeting is also being streamed live over the internet at qac.org live and on Facebook. These media broadcasts provide town citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public sessions. We acknowledge your participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. Public comment will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes. If you care to speak, please check with, is it
Us.
Chris? Yes.
Yeah, all of us.
Tracy.
Any of the hosts. Yeah, yeah. With me or Chris would be fine.
Yeah, through Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to mute our room in here, and we're going to go over to Zoom. All right, we're now in Zoom. We're going to go to just introduce yourself, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
All see me okay? Perfect, thank you. My name is Steve Klein. I'm at 200 Elm Street here in Centreville. And it just sounds like this comment may be somewhat redundant to where you all have landed in the meantime, but I do think it's essential based on how many seats there are to fill on the town council that we get one election for all of those seats, not potentially confuse folks with differing elections. And I think for as much competition as possible, and I'm certainly for as many people running as we can, I do think we need to just have that one election and ensure that everyone that's interested in running has the opportunity to run for one of the seats. So it sounds like you guys have covered that, and I applaud where you landed to avoid that special election scenario. Thanks.
You're going to have 3 minutes, and please introduce yourself.
All right. Can you see me okay and hear me okay? All right. I wanted to first comment, I'm not driving, so everybody's aware. I'm sitting in my car though. A couple things that I was just curious about. I know Sharon had mentioned the option for a ordinance to be placed in the election issue situation. So I don't know if it could be explored further, but I'd be curious if there's some way that something could be written that would allow for Shantz to resign his position and at the same time allow for the election to be pushed back without there needing to be a charter amendment, if that can be done as an ordinance. I don't know the legality of it, but that was just a thought that popped into my head. The other thing I would like to applaud the town on reaching out to businesses to try to figure out a way to let them do outdoor dining, because I think that is going to be extremely important, especially in the near future, for them to continue to sustain any sort of income. And the final thing that I also was curious about, and it totally unrelated to anything that you've talked about tonight, but just maybe a topic of discussion for the next meeting. I don't know what the plan is for the milling and paving on 213, but I'm curious if parking is going to become an issue again, similar to how it was before. And if that is the case, what is going to be done to kind of alleviate the parking situation? Because I know there are a lot of people that park on 213 both ways, and that's going to be a lot of places for people to have to find somewhere to park in the meantime while the milling and paving is being handled. I don't know if that's already been addressed, but that was just another question that I had in regards to that, not really related to this meeting. Other than that, I would again like to thank the town for allowing citizens to do the Zoom functionality, because I think it's awesome, and I will look forward to the next meeting.
All right, that concludes everyone that we had in line. We did have a comment that someone left in the chat because they had to leave. Would you like me to read that?
Sure.
Okay. It comes from Mitchell Delaney from 204 Bristol Lane. He was curious, what about an amendment to allow everyone to run in 2 elections? First election would screen people, and the top 7 would advance to general election to vote for people. And that was left by Mitchell. And I believe that ends our public comment from Zoom. So I'm going to go ahead and mute us over here in Zoom, and I'm going to come back to you, Mike. All right, we're back.
Did you want to touch on the parking, since our council meeting will be the next meeting? They'll already starting the milling and paving
Sure.
supposedly, so we can just kind of get that out there.
Sure. The State Highways planning to, with David A. Bramble Incorporated, planning to start the mill part of the operation on Monday. What they intend to do is go take one loop from South Commerce all the way to North Commerce, milling one half of the street, get down to North Liberty, and turn around and make a milling operation on one half of the street coming to the south. plan to do all that in one day. They did indicate that as soon as the milling operation was passed, the downtown business district area, that they would allow the parking to return as soon as any cleanup operation was complete. Same thing would occur, the second day, when they would do the milling of the second half of the street. Same loop procedure as I described, and again, the parking would be allowed to come back as soon as possible when they finish their cleanup operation. The paving takes a similar pattern as far as trying to do the whole loop from Commerce and over to Liberty. They like to get all that done in one day for half the street. The only difference on the paving side is that because asphalt is hot and needs time to cool, it'd certainly be a longer period of time before parking would be able to be restored to the spaces that are there. So then, of course, the second day they would finish the second half of the paving. They do anticipate probably about a week or so after all the paving's done that they would come through and do all the line striping. So there would be some more coordination of parking spaces that might have to be let go temporarily while they take care of that operation.
Could I just add a comment? I got an email from Bob Rager today. I'm sure the town got it as well. He's the district engineer, I believe. Is that right?
Bob's the Rager's the public relations.
Public relations. So I would encourage anybody who's interested, Joe in particular, get on his email address, and maybe we can send that out in a blast
It's
to
going out
anybody.
tomorrow.
It's going to go out tomorrow. All
We
right,
usually do send
fantastic.
out
Good.
their,
We actually were planning to wait for their meeting that we're having today with State Highway
Okay.
and Bramble in the town to hear what the latest update was for the intent of sending that information out tomorrow. Actually, Bob did send a nice update on
Yeah.
the information I just shared that we'll put on that post.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Any other citizens interested in commenting?
I believe we're still good.
Okay. Well, then I'll look for a motion, or I guess we'll check and see if Josh has anything to say about the outdoor dining, since it's part of this, or,
He's shaking his head no.
no? Okay, then I'm going to look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.